for a market value. And the banks moaned and groaned about it, but they eventually, they gave in on the point. What could they do? It was the legislature passing a law. So the legislature said you have to provide the homeowner with a fair value hearing in a courtroom in front of a judge, where the judge determines value. The bank gets to introduce evidence of value. The homeowner gets, or borrower gets to introduce evidence of value. And the judge does one of these things. And he picks a number. And then that number is used to calculate the deficiency liability that you will have for the unpaid balance on the loan post foreclosure. Okay, so that's called a right to a fair value hearing. Right to a fair value hearing. Okay. Now, guess what? This is where practical experience comes in. That's where if you're reading this in a book, you're not going to catch this. If you're living it, you're going to catch it. It was the way back. This is true for back then during the Great Depression, and it's true today. I'm telling you it's true today. If a bank sues 100 borrowers for not paying their loan, how many of those 100 borrowers are likely to defend themselves? What percentage do you think? Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% maybe? I know. I sued lots of them. When I was representing banks, the vast majority of them were default. It was just paper pushing. We never went to court. We never had went to court. Why? Because the borrower, when they get served the lawsuit, they go, oh, what's the point? Or if they do talk to a lawyer, the lawyer asks them for money, and they go, I don't pay you. Why should I pay you? And the next thing you know, their wages are being garnished, or their bank accounts are being emptied. And they go, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know that this would happen if I didn't sue it. Well, the banks knew this back during the Great Depression as well. And so even notwithstanding that right to a fair value hearing, they still sued the borrowers for that $490,000 because they knew the vast majority of the homeowners weren't going to defend it. They were just going to do nothing. So the banks win by default. And the legislature, again, is like, oh my God, banks, you guys are just crafty sons of guns here. I can't believe what you're doing. No, we got to put a stop to this. So the way they put a stop to, because quite honestly, back then, and it's true today, is oftentimes borrowers don't realize how bad things can get until it's too late. They go to the ATM machine one day, there's no money, more money in the bank account. They get their paycheck, they go, where'd all that money go? Oh, creditor. I didn't know they could do that. They can't. And then it's at that time, for the very first time, they go talk to the lawyer. And the lawyer's telling them, well, judgment's already been entered against you. We got additional hurdles we got to get through to try and unwind this. You got to write a check. I can't write a check anymore. He just took all my money. Sort of a catch-22. So during the Great Depression, by the time people woke up to what had really happened and how severe consequences of their ignoring the bank's behavior really was, it was too late. It was too late. So to protect against that, the legislature provided or passed another law. It's called a post-sale right of redemption. It's called a post-sale right of redemption. What that means is the borrower has up to a year after the sale of the property to repurchase the property for what it's sold for at the foreclosure sale. Okay? Now, the banks were screaming bloody murder to that one. How can we be expected to sell the property to anybody for any reasonable dollar figure if the new owner of the property is going to take ownership of it subject to disgorgement for 1 year? Would you pay any meaningful money for any piece of property if you knew there's a possibility that you'd be disgorged of ownership of that property? No! And that's what the bank's argument was. And the legislature was sympathetic to them. They said, you're right. You're right. That's a good argument. Make you a deal. You give up your right to a deficiency balance, and then you don't have to provide the borrower with a post-sale right of redemption, and you don't have to provide the borrower with a fair value hearing. So if you're not going to provide the borrower with a fair value hearing, if you're not going to provide the borrower with a post-sale right of redemption, no deficiency balance. No deficiency balance for you. Yeah, that's today's law. In a non-judicial foreclosure, there is no post-sale right of redemption. There is no right to a fair value hearing. Conversely, the bank has no right to a deficiency. Does that make sense? That's in a non-judicial foreclosure. Now, in a judicial foreclosure, the bank is entitled to a deficiency, assuming none of the exceptions apply. The bank is entitled to a deficiency, but the bank has to provide you with the right to a fair value hearing and the right to a post-sale right of redemption. So the bank to take your or to come after you for that deficiency balance, you're entitled to a fair value hearing, post-sale right of redemption. What's that? Well, the fair value hearing is to calculate. That's the post-sale right of redemption is 1 year. The fair value hearing is used to calculate the deficiency balance. Okay, but I want to emphasize that's today's foreclosure law. Most of the foreclosures are non-judicial, but the banks are getting crafty with trying to circumvent around those protections. We're going to talk about that here in a second. They're getting very crafty.
Does this apply to principal residents only, or any other second homes?
What I'm talking about, what I've spoken about so far applies across the board. I'm going to get, but I will start drawing some distinctions here as to residential versus commercial.
So residential, primary, and secondary.
Secondary residential. No, well, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. It'll become clear to you in a second here. Now, most of you, again, are going to be facing a non-judicial foreclosure. First, legal right you need to be aware of in a non-judicial foreclosure is, believe it or not, you have the legal right to bring your loan current and you get to keep your house. But as with all good things in life, it has an expiration date. And that expiration date is 5 days before the sale of the property. I have had multiple clients come to me with big stacks of cash in their hands saying, I got the money to do it, but they won't take it. Why wasn't the bank taking their money? Well, it could be for any number of reasons. But the ones that come to my mind is they were within the 5 days. They're down day number 3 before the sale of the property. The bank is saying, hey, you no longer have the right to reinstate your loan. You keep the property. I'm sorry, but that's unfortunate for you. And the client comes running to me, and they say, what do I do? I said, that's unfortunate. Your right of reinstatement has lapsed. How about bankruptcy? Bankruptcy will stop the foreclosure. Then all of a sudden we're running around trying to figure out a way to get them into a bankruptcy. So if you have any ambitions of reinstating the loan, make sure you don't wait to the last minute to do so. If you wait to the last minute to do so, you may have problems, because then it becomes discretionary with the lender as to what they're going to do.
Is that 5 days prior to the posted sale date, or if the lender chooses to postpone the sale, that also will stretch out the 5 days prior period?
Okay, he's asking the question, I don't know if you guys can hear down here. He's asking, what sale date does that apply to? And here's the safest rule of thumb that I want to share. If you find yourself, the safest thing to do is, if you're going to reinstate, if it's on your mind to reinstate now. Don't wait. The closer you get to that 5-day mark, whether it's a continued sale date or not, the odds are increasing exponentially that you're going to encounter a problem. Even if you timely reinstate, you run into a problem with the bureaucracy.